The first of the presidential debates between Barack Obama and Mitt Romney takes place next week. The hope on both sides is that, in what still looks like a tight race, their man will say something that appeals to the small number of people who still haven't decided how to vote. Justin Webb, who saw 2 presidential elections when he was our correspondent in Washington, says too much attention's focused on the nation's don't knows.
I must have cut a very strange figure on Miami Beach the other day. It was very hot, sparkling sunshine, glorious waves, but I was not dressed for the beach. I was making a film for Newsnight and wearing a formal shirt and what one rather unkind correspondent described as BBC trousers, chinos with lots of pockets. I had a microphone receiver jammed into a belt, and I was running, madly, helter-skelter, up and down the beach, looking for my lost wallet. After 10 minutes I was soaking and panting and still without it. Thinking it was gone for good, I dried off, addressed the camera and went back to our hotel. The next day I received a tweet. It was a picture of my wallet, sent by a Mexican woman who had found it discarded in some bushes near the beach and had taken it back to Mexico with her. She had looked me up on Twitter and was happy to send it back. Now, this is a story of kindness and the usefulness of modern communications, but it's also a story of action. The woman who found my wallet took a decision. I will take it home with me, and used her initiative to find me. She is plainly a person who knows what she thinks is right and wrong and is willing to act on it. How refreshing, and how unlike a certain group of people over whom the American media tend to slaver at this time of a presidential race, but who, in my opinion, deserve much less attention than they get: the undecided voters. During my Florida trip, I met a man walking his dog who told me very proudly that he was still to be convinced by either candidate this year. They're going to have to work harder, he said. Then he told me, in the course of a conversation about America's space program, that 9/11 had happened because America had lost its domination of space. If America was still sending people to the moon, he said, Osama bin Laden would have held back. Well, that conversation summed up for me the 2 aspects of America's undecided voters that I dislike the most. First, they're so used to being fawned over that they've become quite arrogant. They want to be seduced by the politicians, spoken to personally. They have a babyish desire to have their tummies tickled. It's all about them. Secondly, they are often really stupid. The American media often suggest that these Einsteins are programming their computer-like mental machinery with so many wickedly abstruse arguments and counter-arguments for each candidate that it's simply and naturally and wonderfully taking a long time to come up with the result. Oh, pull the other one. I remember back in 2008 reading somewhere an interview with an undecided voter who was asked more about her life. Well, she said, she liked cats, but she'd been thinking about getting a dog. How long for? 5 years. I rest my case. As one of America's wisest political commentators put it, undecided voters are the kind of people who, when eating pickles, get their heads stuck in the jar. There is a staggering amount of political ignorance in America, but let us not lionize the Ivy League of ignoramuses, those who can see at this moment no difference between Obama and Romney. And let us hope, too, that the candidates do not pander to these folk. It made me wince to see Romney on some idiotic TV programme the other day talking about his technique for getting toothpaste out of a tube. He didn't want to be there, but his advisers will have suggested it as a way of getting to the undecided, who spend a lot of their time watching daytime TV. The president's advisers tell him the same thing, and he takes the same notice, preferring on the first day of the General Assembly of the United Nations to be on junk TV instead of meeting world leaders. Let's hope in the presidential TV debates they abandon that nonsense and set out competing visions and thrill and enthuse Americans who have bothered to think about politics and have a view, a passion. Yes, it's true that political partisanship and the nastiness that can come with it is at what feels like an all-time high in America, but being certain about what you think and being unable to compromise are not the same thing. The American media often fail to grasp that. And here's a practical point. Only just over half of Americans will vote in this presidential election. Getting your own core supporters to the polls ought to be enough to win it if the candidates only had the courage to forget all this middle ground bilge. I wonder if that woman has made her getting a dog decision yet. Whatever it is, or is not, I'm glad that neither she nor any other undecided voter found my wallet.
And that's Justin Webb. The three members of the Russian